Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the angelic realm. You would probably not believe me had I told you that something so sinister is brewing in our atmosphere of Gaia's atmosphere, within the darkness that represents all that had never left her since she had dropped down into the two-dimensional and three-dimensional frequency upon her descension into our very own little realm that guided her, that swayed her, that skewed her up until this point and perspective within our reality field, where she now feels the need to be able to ascend back into God's bosom, into the five-dimensional frequency in which we've all resided in for all of this time. For all of this time in energetic frequency, we've resided in the angelic realm, leading down, all the way down into the two-dimensional, three-dimensional, four-dimensional, five-dimensional, six-dimensional, seventh-dimensional, eighth-dimensional, ninth-dimensional, 11th dimensional, 13th dimensional, 14th dimensional frequency, and up and above into the angelic realm of what is within a spiritual essence of what is. It is just that we've chosen to close off our field, our conscious field, our experience field, the physicality of our energetic field into the two-dimensional and three-dimensional realm of creation field itself. And as I sit here, tapping into the alignment system that Gaia will need to shift into for her to come into total and whole alignment with a source frequency that is so much so a part of each ounce and sliver of that in which you and I shall forever not be in perception in this moment in time as we sit on top of Gaia's surface, as I sit on her surface in this chair in front of 10 Navy Wharf in a rental condo as I'm here for the week downstairs in the guest suite to record this content, to alleviate myself from the pain of the darkness that's been residing in my home, in my reality field, in my reality scape, of the darkened experiences that have ever been crafted to be true and to be real within our field. Just know that each and every one of our blueprints encompasses the entirety of the blueprint of the soul consciousness of our entire quantum verse within itself. And during a creation scape of a creation scope of the story of creation, our soul decided to transgress and transverse itself within all of the meanings of the blueprint that we hold, which is that of a 50% darkness and 50% brightness blueprint within the story, within the infinite possibilities of what is and what shall forever be the story of Aliana itself, the part, the portion, the fractal of our consciousness in God's frequency that decided to fractal itself out into the infinalities of unknown as she began as this divine feminine structure within a neutrality consciousness of what is began the greatest ascension and the greatest deception within and without our quantum field, within creation itself, within the creation of our very own little quantum verse that we now sit in, that Gaia now sits in, within the two-dimensional and three-dimensional frequency of our reality field. And as I sit here to tell you the story of creation, I'm sure I've repeated this many, many times in different videos, and you might say that she's on repeat. But the stories that I tell within any moment in time always draws back into our beginning, not into the beginning of it all, not into the beginning of the all of a creation scope above and beyond our quantum verse of our little beginnings. And as the deception fields have been thick for you to come into a realization that the creation of the self, that the creation within our field, that the creation within source consciousness itself, to trigger itself into the aspect of creation had never triggered in from the Big Bang theory that has been taught to us from an infinality of nothingness that exploded into everything that made so much sense within a consciousness scope of the consciousness that you inhibit, of the consciousness that we inhibit as a whole of a humanity field in itself. And as you come into the realization that reality is more complex than you could ever decipher to be true and real, just know that this confusion was never meant to lead you astray in any moment in time within your awakening process. And just know that this confusion will deviate itself from the confusiveness of all that it is and land you right where you need to be, into a soft landing, into a hard landing, into a landing filled with hopes lost and dreams squished to the ground of all that you've ever known in this lifetime, to then be able to fall even deeper into this hope lost, to find that you are the everlasting hope of the light that I speak of, that you are, and that you've always been a part and a portion and a fractal and an important aspect at that, no matter who you are, of the light that I speak of in this moment in time. And as you sit to listen to my indiscretions, to my discretionary tales within these indiscretions of a reality field of knots, just know that you may not seem to want to concur with everything, with all of the conceptualization of what is being delivered to you within any pocket of my content, but just know that that is also okay. That no matter where you sit upon the ever landing scape of the scope of this reality field within the 50% darkness and 50% brightness of our creation field within Gaia's realm in this very moment in time, there's no wrong, there's no right. There's no right within the wrongs that there has ever been, and there has been never any wrongs within the right of a creation field that knows no limitations, that knows no hesitations in the limitations that it feels to be true and correct within any moment in time within our consciousness. And within this reality field of the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional frequency of what is, you've been crafted to know that of the limitations within the capacity of the human scope that we experience within any moment in time. And as you all know, God knows no limitations of what is. God sees no limitations within our reality field, of a reality field of a minute scope of the creation within the all. As God created this creation scope of Gaia herself, as Gaia fractaled from this consciousness of Aliana, of God itself, of a portion and a part of this consciousness of the entirety of the whole. And so as stories are as long as they are wide, so have you fractaled out from the entirety of the whole, within the whole of your oversoul, to oversee yourself in the trajectory of this lifetime, in this path line that you've landed in, within the 50% darkness and 50% brightness of the creation scope within your reality field. Excuse the shine on my forehead as I've been experiencing and experimenting with a bunch of Korean skincare, and as they all say in Korea, the glowier you are, the shinier you are, the more beautified the texturization of your skin becomes. So I don't purposefully need to or want to be glowing in any moment in time, but I'm following a trend. And as you guys follow trends in any of these moments in time, just know at the end of the day that they are trends. Trends come and trends go. Trends will alleviate the fear and the pain that you feel in your rejection field, to want to feel accepted within a certain scope of experimentation, within humanity itself, within a certain scope of belonging, within creation scope itself. But just know at the end of these trends, at the end of creation scope itself, you will be able to bring yourself back home to alleviate the symptom of wanting to and needing to feel heard, of needing to and shifting into wanting to be seen, of being seen and being disappointed, of the alleviation within your field to not be seen enough, of being not seen enough, and being everlastingly grateful to even be heard a little, of being heard and never being heard to begin with, within the hearing and listening ear of the ones who you perceive to have been hearing you out for this whole entire time. And that is our reality field, ladies and gentlemen. If you've stayed coherent enough to stay and stick by until this moment in time in my projection field, then you know, and you've alleviated yourself in the knowing that God is here, God is now, God is you, God is I. God is I in an everlasting need to tell these stories and tales within a time of all time, within the cohesiveness of the human language, for the human scope to pick up on within any moment in time within the ascension syndromes of what is. And the wholeness of reality and all that it has ever been within a fractalized aspect of the self of what is. As I sit here, even as I declare myself as being a fractal of God, I can never become so intrinsically whole sitting in my body, just as you can never be so intrinsically whole sitting in your body, participating in the scopes and scapes within this reality fields of what is. And just the concept of you holding a phone, holding an alleviation within your reality field to alleviate you into the boredom that you feel in any moment in time, to need to and to want to stimulate your mind, stimulate your brains in the essence of this reality field in which you've been trained to know how to do within any moment in time. Just know that all this will fade within soon time as the trigger point within our ascension scope becomes triggered into the greatest and grandest solar flash that the humanity has ever known to be seen or to be known in this moment in time. And as I take a pause, as I know I've been speaking far too fast, as the alleviation of me needing to and wanting to get this energy out into a reality field of unheard proportions, of knowing that this reality field will not agree with every word that I say, of being okay with just that, and seeing and feeling that this reality field needs to experience all that I have to say, all the while knowing that not all of this reality field is my target audience, all the while believing that my target audience is out there within their own perception field, looking for answers, looking for hope, looking for justification as to the expansiveness that they've been able to expand their consciousness into, as to whether or not someone else within this field is also experiencing the same justifications that they seek to be heard, to be known, to be seen, to be alive, is what we are in the physicality of what is on Gaia's surface. And the intrinsic wholeness of the conceptualization of just being alive, just being able to breathe these particles in the air that fuels our body on a daily basis, on a secondary basis, on a tertiary basis, within the scope of the rotational apex of the sun, of our great central sun, in which our planetary fields rotate around, is a miracle in itself. And as I sit here and almost lose my voice, as you've come to a realization that I perhaps am or am not whispering a little bit, I sound a little bit different, that is because I'm coming down with a cold. During the aspects of creation scope within Gaia, humans have been alleviated from the pain of this distortion field by coming down with something. And to go into the explanation of that is another story, but just know as you feel into your body, bodily fluids and body pain that needs to be expelled from your body, whether or not it is the emotion of wanting to cry, the emotion of wanting to diarrhea, excuse my vile words, into the toilet as you're holding on to toxicity that your body no longer needs. As you begin to shed of all of the liquid formats within your biological scope that your body no longer needs to hold on to, just know that within any moment in time, the alleviation of needing to or wanting to release of this energy will show up in your physicality in all forms, sizes, and shapes. And as reality fields can never dictate that in which you've forever always been, just know, just fall back on your faith in the knowing that God is real, God is here, God is you, and God is I. And God is using the aspect within the solar flash, within the energetic frequencies that carries it through and through these ley lines of what is through the quantum burst, as a deliverance of hope, as a deliverance of need, as a deliverance of detoxification, as the solar flash approaches us quite fast in the scope of the dimensional frequency of what is. As today is officially November 18th, and as I say here, I may not be able to post this video from today as I've gone back over to edit the audio from my November 11th audio that I still haven't posted. November 12th, I recorded something, I still haven't posted that. November 16th, I believe, I did record something that has already been posted onto my podcast, Spotify, that you guys should definitely check out. And I think because I've been posting in unsynchronization, I will begin to label and number all of my podcast episodes to not cause any digressions or any discrepancies in the order of things that they should be tapped into in accordance to universal laws of acceptance within the storytelling field of what is. And if you've been so enthralled with the stories that I tell, just know that there's a reason so proportionally large that you can never be able to figure out in this moment in time. And the reason is, ladies and gentlemen, every word that I speak is every ounce of who and what you've always been on a spiritual level, on a wholesome level, away from these bodies of ours, away from this toxicity that we've created for ourselves to drop down into to alleviate the pain of the ascension syndromes, to detoxify our bodies. Our brains, our minds, our bodies, our subconscious will be seeking for a way to wrap itself around these conceptualizations of what it's picking up in its field of the memories that are being triggered in from these everlasting lifetimes within these reincarnation cycles of what is that you've been able to live throughout all of eternity. As you are an infinite soul of quantification so large and so everlastingly whole in all that you've ever been. And as you begin to pick up on that, you will find yourself getting sick in all ways that you can envision to get sick. The ones who have not been able to encompass this new frequency that's incoming into Gaia's field will find themselves feeling ill, falling off of this surface with cancer, literal cancerous tumors. The ones who have come into the recognition that they need to adapt to these energies by releasing of the darkness within their field will no longer want to hold on to these cancerous tumors and will begin to do the emotional and spiritual work encompassed around the releasing of all of these energies that they hold. I'm drinking a bubbly. It's not an advertised ad, but I've been purchasing these on repeat. They're always like kind of a staple in my fridge, and I know that they may not be so good for who and what we are as we shift forward into the ascension symptoms and syndromes leading up to the ascension itself, as our body will begin to reject all that is not alleviating of this toxicity that's being built up by drinking this type of quote unquote poison. And you're going to say this is just sparkling water beverage, raspberry flavored. But just know that it had never been created with our toxicity in mind as to how much toxicity we can hold in compilation in regards to all of the different sources of toxicity that we can inhale and ingest in any moment in time on a physical, spiritual, and mental level. You will begin to sort out what needs to go first. And in my personal experience, in the alleviation of my field, had always been coffee. And yeah, I'm not proud to say I was at one point addicted to drinking this caffeinated beverage once a day. And that is how they hook you in. The caffeine hooks you in to the alleviation of your pain points and stressors within your day-to-day life of why you feel so exhausted, why you feel so tired. And just having the thought of being able to drink this yummy tasting beverage. As we all know, coffee can be utilized as something that satisfies the soul on a taste level. and to be able to utilize that to awaken ourselves, to feel alive again, to feel whole again in a moment when we have work to catch up on, in a moment when we have an event to attend, in a moment when we have to do our makeup and we're tired and we need to wake up, we need to feel a boost. Just know that that is also has always been a toxicity that decalcifies the calcification within our pineal gland into the decalcification of the calcification of our pineal gland that leads into more calcification. So as these layers and layers decalcify and layer back up stronger, wider, harder, strengthier, into more crystallizations of a barrier field that blocks you from your third eye chakra, that alleviates you from being able to be seen, from needing to be seen and wanting to be seen in a reality field of today's field within Gaia's field. Just know that the feeling of being seen and wanting to be seen and being heard and needing to be heard, just that feeling itself will dissipate as you begin to slowly uncalcify your pineal gland, as you begin to justify the need to be free of this toxicity. You will be led, you will be guided by your inner knowing. Follow that with all that you have. Believe in that with all that you've got. As all that you've got at the end of the day, aside from the physicality of what is source consciousness, is you and yourself in spirit, in knowing, in faith, in hope, in forgiveness, so large that you cannot see or fathom to be true in this moment in time. But as I tap into the story of toxins and why they were created and how they were meant to skew into our reality field to block us from our connection point with that in which we've always been, just know that as you wake up in the morning, as you tap into the essence of the knowing that perhaps you need this coffee, perhaps you don't. Perhaps you want this coffee because it tastes good and you need to wake up, but perhaps it's not so good for you. Perhaps this milk, this homogenized milk, this non-homogenized milk has always been a part of your palate, your diet, but perhaps the idea of drinking milk disgusts you on an inner core level. Perhaps the eggs that you're eating can be more healthier had you wanted to buy the organic type. Perhaps the rice that you're eating needs to be washed as it's looking a little bit dirty, so let's give it a second wash. Just know that your inner knowing is your inner compass, and your inner compass in the inner knowing of what is can never lead you astray. And even as it leads you into the wrong direction of the right frequency, just know that within this wrong perceived frequency, you've always been meant to be guided and to be led into lessons to grow, to be learned within this lifetime, to alleviate you from the pain and the syndrome within these ascension cycles of tapping into the darkness for far too long and far too wider than you have to suffer through. So as you reject these tendencies due to earthly comprehensions of what it means to even be healthy again, ladies and gentlemen, as you tap in and out of your coherence, your mind coherence, your heart coherence, as you tap back and forth into all of the coherence that you know to be true and real, just know that this at a subconscious level, you are consciously and subconsciously being guided by the sun's rays, by our great central center release of that in which no longer serves you. So after intercourse, for example, if you feel, ladies, in your uterus a pain that is stronger than no other, a disheartening discontent building up in your sacral chakra, just know that these signs, these symptoms are being washed up into your reality field to push you towards stagnancy of what you've been doing that has been causing much toxicity within your being, within your loving, perceived loving, within your knowing of the toxic relationships that you've been sitting in. And that is not to say that every relationship is toxic, but trust that your body will feel a way, will come up with a way, will know a way to warn you, to show you what needs to be tended to. So tend to these signs, tend to these signals, tend to these all-encompassing subconscious signals that you hold in your reality field in any moment in time. And in this moment in time, within the ascension symptoms and syndromes of what is, to know what is right and what isn't, and who you should listen to and who you should not. I'm here to sit here to declare to you that the only real resource, regardless of education, regardless of what has been imprinted into the textbooks of your knowledge field within the coherence of Gaia's surface, regardless of which news channel you tap into, the best and most resourceful and most trustworthy resource that your oversoul can ever guide you and lead you into the knowing and belonging and feeling is the frequency of you. I cannot sit here and tell you what to do. At the end of the day, if you wanted to enjoy a bubbly and a coffee, so be it. But as you sit in the knowing that you should not do such things, as you've received a subconscious tingling, an inkling, a subconscious feeling, a conscious feeling that this might not be right, follow that feeling with all that you have. Because all you have at the end of the day in this frequency field, as the darkness rises, are those ever so non-distortional and distortional feelings within the self. And your inner compass, again, ladies and gentlemen, can never lead you astray in this world. And as you guide your children through the knowing of your inner compass, just know that there can never be a wrong direction within the right direction of what is for you to worry about, to alleviate the pain of you even wanting or needing to be seen. First and foremost, you need to decalcify that pineal gland. And you may not even know of the repercussions of not ever knowing that you need to decalcify this pineal gland. You may not even know that this pineal gland exists. You may not even believe in the third eye. You may not even believe in God itself, but believe what is true, believe what you can feel, believe in what you know, which is the feeling inside your heart chakra, your heartscape, your heart scope, as you tap into the knowing of what is needed within any moment in time, as much as we need to breathe, as much as we need to live, as much as we need to learn, as much as we need to feed off of this toxicity. We will know when we need to release of something that no longer serves us for who we think we are, for what we think we know. For how we behave within any moment in time is dictated by our knowing within our inner scope, our inner compass that drives us into the being of who and what we are as a humanity. So ladies and gentlemen, as I sit here, and as sometimes you may worry about the cloned meat, the chemtrails in the sky, the medication, the vaccines that have been administered to us already, the calcification of our pineal gland is a battle to be unheard and unseen. And the decalcification of the pineal gland has already begun to be encompassed by the consciousness of the sun and all of the work that it's been able to put in through alleviating its own pain within the darkness of the three-dimensional and two-dimensional frequency, as it begins the preparation for itself to ascend back to God, source frequency. Ladies and gentlemen, our great central sun is nearing the end of its magnificent lifespan. Within Gaia's surface and in her core, there's a deep knowing that the intrinsic death of the sun alleviates Gaia into a higher, more brighter frequency, more connected to the angelic realm of what is, that fuels through and through the essence of the lifespan and the lifetime and the life hopes and the life dreams that we've been living in without the recognition of what it is, without the recognition of what it has always been. As we tranquilize these frequencies within a lower dimensional field, our sun will begin to expel parts and portions of its consciousness onto humanity to awaken us into this knowing that we no longer need to drink coffee. We no longer yearn to have sexual intercourse within these toxic cycles of the men or women that we allow into our emotional bodies, that we no longer need to feed off of the ideation of wanting to or needing to be seen and to be led with the ideation of just that. And as we become more confident, more comfortable in the alleviation of what it means to not be so human, as we proceed on to a scope of higher consciousness and higher knowing, as we've been anchored into our egoic knowing for all of this time within this lifetime, just know that we are shifting in consciousness as an entirety of a whole, as an entirety of a collective in itself. And within the shifting, within this consciousness, within the alleviating of the pain, of the hurt, of the unknown, of the unseen that you can ever envision or imagine to be true, just know that all of this was built in for a purpose, and you're here, you're now, you're all, your source frequency through and through, and you shall never not be that in which you've not been for all of this time. And yet, as the decalcification of your pineal gland has not subsided into the purity and the wholeness and the fullness of the energetic body that you encompass, you will walk this earth in darkness. And in darkness, I do not mean literal darkness. I mean the frequency that you are required to hold to even exist on this planetary field within the lower dimensional frequencies of what is encompasses the majority of the darkness in the entirety of our quantum verse of what is, as the 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional frequencies are intrinsically the darkest places that you can ever drop down into as a fractal of the soul that you are, to learn these lessons of hope, of forgiveness so deep and so real that by the end of this seemingly perceived lifetime, as you come into the realization of the allness that you've ever been, of the intrinsicness of the non-death concept of death itself, of the alleviating of the aspect of the pain that you've been holding on to, in knowing that, in believing and knowing and believing that at the end of this lifetime and lifespan, there might not be anything on the other side at all. You may not even make it anywhere significant or important at all that's more significant than where you sit in this moment in time. Just know that you are wrong. The deception that has been deceiving you is coming to an expiration, and you are more than what meets the eye. You are more than what you can ever fathom to be true and to be real, and that you are a light worker. And for those that I speak to, even though you're not, you are also as much a part of Source's consciousness as we are. We are all equal in our rights. And I would just like to touch on this equality of creation within creation. Creation was created within the multidimensional aspect of our creation field within the quantum verse itself. And within creation itself, it was decided for us to have that free will to expand and shift into infinalities of darkness and brightness of what is. And as you sit there as a light worker, as you may or may not have tapped into the deception field of the 144,000 beings that have landed here onto the surface to breathe, to feel, to lift, to awaken, all in all through the ascension to make a difference, just know that that could never be so far from the truth of the falsities that you believe in. There's no such thing as 144 collective, 1,000 million fractals, hundreds. Nothing in this world can dictate within the billions, trillions, and the scopes of uncountable numbers within source frequency of creation, of the limitations that you've set for yourself. The ridiculousness of this concept of 144 has been just that, crafted by the Luciferian regimes within the spiritual aspects and realms of what is, to keep you within your dimensional pocket of what is. And as you tap in and get confirmation that the 144 is real and true, just know that you're also sitting in a pocket of deception field, that just know that you haven't expanded to a point, to a perspective as of yet, for you to alleviate the pain in yourself, to feel the need to not be heard and not be seen. So as you decalcify your pineal gland, just know that all conceptualizations within the concepts that you sit in may or may not be a justification within the self to feel more brighter, more lighter than your neighbor, more brighter, more important than that of the non-144, more justified, more hatred towards that of those who do not understand you for who and what you are. Just feel into it, ladies and gentlemen. It's not right in the entirety of the conceptualization of the 144. And I've been following in with these Facebook groups that are led by these spiritual mentors directing entire thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of innocent souls towards themselves in a way that drives them in circular motions to alleviate the demonic entities that are attached so intrinsically to these souls, to this reality field. We must first alleviate ourselves into coming into the belief system that we are as important or even so more important than our neighbors. As the conceptualization of the deviation, of the differentiation of the borders that we live in that has caused everlasting wars within this deception field, everlasting rejection of our neighbors within this deception field, had always meant to be a deception field within our deception field. So as you come into a realization, you may not believe me or know this to be true in this moment in time, as you find yourself to be quite special, to be able to awaken prior to anyone else in this field. Just know that we're all leading into an awakening scope, regardless of whether or not you're a light worker. You've just awakened on a different path than all of the other equivalents of the counterparts that are ever so deserving of also being here in their seat, regardless of whether or not they've awakened to their field or not. Acceptance is something that comes into you as you step into wholeness of a neutrality consciousness. And as long as you are rooted too deeply in the light of what is, which the Luciferian regime has crafted to differentiate lightness from darkness in this reality field, you will be rejecting the darkness that is so intrinsically a part of who and what you are. And as long as you reject this darkness, you will never be able to make it back into the centralized point of neutrality. As to be neutral, you must first surpass the ideation that the darkness is even not a part of the brightness in all that it represents, which is and forever will be a part of the darkness in which it foreshadows into the brightness, in which it co-shadows into the darkness, in which it alleviates the pain within the brightness to want to be as bright or as dimmed as it shall ever be within the cohesiveness of this 50% brightness and 50% darkness of our creation fields, of the symbolization of the yin and yang, crafted and created by the Luciferian blueprint of what is, to make us believe that the rotational scope of these energies can never merge, can never foresee to be merged. This everlasting dance within the darkness of what is, alleviating the pain of the brightness of what is, to ever want to step into the wholeness of what is, which alleviates the pain within the darkness of what is, of wanting to succumb to the brightness of what is. And within the opposition of self, the darkness can never, ever succumb to the brightness of what is, as it is all in all the destruction field within everything that ever wanted to take hold of the brightness and overcome it and kill it and stifle it, to take hold of the entirety of what is. And as long as darkness resides in our reality field, there's no concept of merging. There's no concept. There's no conceptualization of non-neutrality, ladies and gentlemen. And as Source has always sat in a seat and a placement of neutrality, sending out the creation field of creation itself for us to experience that of the non-linearity that makes up this neutrality field of the 50% darkness and 50% brightness of what is. Just know that as you sit where you sit, there's no judgments coming from me or Source or anybody at that. These judgments have always been a distortional field crafted to alleviate you from the pain of needing to ascend, of wanting to release of this darkness that can never be stifled, to be killed. To overcome this darkness is not by killing it, ladies and gentlemen. This darkness can never be stifled, never be killed. It can be compartmentalized, however, but that is another story to be told. And within the 50% blueprint and 50% darkness and 50% brightness that you sit in, that is who you are at an intrinsic core level that you cannot get rid of in this moment in time as you sit on the brighter scale of what is, rejecting the darkness within yourself to alleviate the pain of needing to accept what that is, what that has always been, by coming to the belief system that you're so special, that you sit in the 144 category, has always been a succession within the darkness that they've crafted for you to sit in, to alleviate you into wanting to grow brighter and bigger. And I know this might seem contradictory at times, but just think about it. How bright can you get with this limitation in scope, in the knowing that there's only 144,000 light workers here? God knows no numbers. God knows no limitations. God knows no scopes as to what it is capable of within any moment in time. And as the entirety of consciousness has the free will to skew between brightness and darkness, perhaps a majority of this 144 that you perceive is true will begin to shift more closely in alliance with the darkness, leaving the remaining ones of you to uphold this reality field, which is an impossibility at that. Just know that the scope of generalization within the conceptualization of the scope of what we are here to do has always been anchored down into a misalignment, to be designed to misalign you from your mission. Believe it to be true that neutrality exists. Believe to know when you receive the inkling to reject the darkness by feeling as if you are a little bit more special than the rest and a little bit brighter than the rest, that you are not sitting in a neutrality perspective. You are in opposition of this scale, not in the center point, but more so sliding back and forth as we do so every single day, as we sit in this dimensional frequency that pulls us into oppositions of self within any time, within any moment in time. And as we are guided by the sun to slide back into neutrality, just know that there's nothing you can do to stop this. There's nothing that the darkness can do to alleviate its pain into the conceptualization of needing to grow, as it knows sooner or later it will become compartmentalized within this reality field, so brightness can experience what it has been crafted to not know in any moment in time prior to the knowing, before the ascension symptoms of what it's like to come back to neutrality, all the while sitting in our physical bodies of what is. The next few years are going to be an exciting one, and as you sit in the distortion field that you sit in, just know that all of this was made for a reason, and regardless of what you decide to be, to feel, to do within any moment in time, that you are not as special as you feel you are. I am not as special as I project for myself to be. As a leader of this collective, of the portion of the light working scope that is able to hold this angelic light in our light bodies, we are all equivalent to each other through and through, as we are equivalent to the darkness in this moment in time through and through, and in all moments in time, as we are all equivalent to each and every fractal of a source consciousness, including that flower sitting out in your backyard. And the seriousness of it all will never surpass the encompassment of my facial expressions or the tone of voice that I sit to speak in. Yet each one of us dropped down here for a mission, for our voices to be heard. And no matter how you choose to take the high road, the low road, the in-between roads, it's okay. It's all okay where you sit. If you perceive to sit in this 144, then sit comfortably prior to being able to be pulled into a neutrality aspect of what is. Source needs to sit somewhere. So sit comfortably wherever you are. And as the excitement comes into a coherence, as we near the solar flash, the end of this month, I will tap back in with more informationary scope as to the delegation within the detailing of what needs to be done, what needs to be seen, what needs to be heard within this reality field within any specific moment in time. And as it takes a while for me to edit the audio for more clarity and withdraw the audio from these videos so I can post it into different platforms, give me grace, give me time. These will be dated in numbers. These will be dated in coherence as I speak my words. A human with limited capacity. I do have an assistant, but grace is much needed in everybody's fields, no matter whether it's towards the darkness or towards the brightness. And as we shift towards a more wholer energy, grace shall be forgiven. Grace shall be forgotten as the darkness ramps up in coherency and contingency to alleviate the need for us to even have grace. But as we work against this turmoil and this energy, just know that you are whole. You are okay in times that you don't have grace. It's also okay. And that is the essence of neutrality in itself. And as you battle and fight against your demons, your devils, your angels, your whatever you perceive to be true and whole in this lifetime, your Buddha, your whatever, your Allah, just know that you have never not been whole, and this is your journey. And regardless of whether or not your neighbor is walking through the same doorstep, into the same pathway, into the same hallway of the very same journey that you've sat in, that you've grown through, that you've alleviated the need to step out of, that is also okay within the neutrality aspect of source frequency in all that you've ever been. Good night, good evening, good morning, wherever you are, and I shall return and touch base with you another time, another day, within another pocket scope within this creation field of what is.